Jesus, I surrender all to Him. I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live.
The 16th of November, 1900, Volume 4. Jesus removes her heart and gives her His love as heart. This morning, after I received communion, my adorable Jesus made me see my interior, all strewn with flowers, in the shape of a heart, and He was inside of it, amusing and delighting Himself completely. Seeing Him in that attitude, I said, "My sweet Jesus, when will it be that you take this heart of mine to conform it completely to yours, in such a way that I may live from the life of your heart?" While I was saying this, my highest and only good took a lance and opened me at the place corresponding to my heart. Then he pulled it out with his hands, and he looked at it thoroughly to see whether it was stripped and possessed of those qualities to be able to be inside his most holy heart. I too looked at it, and to my surprise I saw, impressed on one side of it, the cross, the sponge, and the crown of thorns. But as I wanted to see the other side and the inside, for it seemed swollen as if it could be opened, my beloved Jesus prevented me, saying to me, "I want to mortify you by not letting you see all that I have poured into this heart. Ah, yes, here inside this heart there are all the treasures of my graces that human nature can arrive at containing." At that moment he enclosed it inside his most holy heart, adding, "Your heart has taken possession within my heart, and I will give you my love as heart, which will give you life." And drawing near that part, he sent 3 breaths containing light, which took the place of my heart. Then he closed the wound, telling me, "Now more than ever it is appropriate for you to fix yourself in the centre of my will, having my love alone as heart. You must not go out of it even for one instant, for my love will find its true nourishment in you only if it finds my will in you entirely and completely. In it will my love find its contentment and true and faithful correspondence." Then, drawing near my mouth, he sent me 3 more breaths, and he also poured a most sweet liqueur, which inebriated me completely. Then, as though taken by enthusiasm, he said, "See, your heart is in mine, therefore it is no longer yours." And he kissed me over and over again, and made many finesses of love to me. But who can say them all? It is impossible for me to manifest them. Who can say what I felt when I found myself inside myself? I can only say that I felt as if I were no longer myself, with no passion, with no inclination, with no desire, completely immersed in God. At the place of my heart, I could feel a sensible icy cold compared to the other parts. End of the reading. The 16th of November 1902, Volume 4. The Word of God is joy. The command of Monsignor regarding the coming of the confessor. I spent last night in great distress. I saw the confessor in the act of giving me prohibitions and commands. Blessed Jesus came for a little to only telling me, "My daughter, the word of God is joy, and one who listens to it but does not let it bear fruit with his works gives it a black shade and covers it with mud." Then, feeling much suffering, I tried not to pay attention to what I was seeing, when all of a sudden the confessor came, telling me that Monsignor commanded in an absolute way that the priest was not supposed to come any more to make me come out of my usual state, but that I should go out of it by myself, something which I had not been able to obtain for as many as 18 years, in spite of tears and prayers and the vows and promises I made to the Most High. In fact, I confess before God that all the sufferings I might have gone through have not been true crosses for me, but delights and graces of God. But the sole and true cross for me has been the coming of the priest. So, knowing the impossibility of this outcome from many years of experience, my heart was lacerated by the fear that I might not be able to obey, and I would do nothing but shed most bitter tears, praying to that God who alone sees the depth of my heart, that he would have pity on the position I found myself in. While praying in tears, I saw a flash of light and a voice saying, "My daughter, to make known that it is I will obey him, and after I have given him proofs of obedience, he will obey me." And as I said, "Lord, I fear very much that I may not be able to obey," he added, "Obedience releases and chains, and since it is chain, it binds the divine volition with the human and makes them one, in such a way that the soul does not act with the power of her will, but with the power of the divine will. Besides, it is not you who will obey, but I will obey in you." Then, all afflicted, he added, "My daughter, did I not tell you that keeping you in this state of victim and starting the slaughter in Italy is almost impossible for me?" So I became a little bit more calm, though I did not know how this obedience was to be carried out. End of the reading. The 16th of November 1903, Volume 6. There is no sacrifice without denying oneself, and sacrifice and denying oneself gives rise to the most pure and perfect love. This morning, as I was outside of myself, I found myself with baby Jesus in his arms, and with a virgin who laid me on the ground to make me suffer the crucifixion, not with nails, but with fire, placing a charcoal of fire on my hands and feet. Blessed Jesus was there assisting me while I was suffering, and said to me, "My daughter, there is no sacrifice without denying oneself, and sacrifice and denying oneself give rise to the most pure and perfect love. And since sacrifice is sacred, it happens that it consecrates the soul to me as a sanctuary worthy of me, to make of it my perpetual dwelling. So let sacrifice work in you to render your soul and body sacred, so that everything may be sacred in you, and consecrate everything to me." End of the reading. The 16th of November 1906, Volume 7. Difference between the offences of the religious and those of the secular. As I was in my usual state, I saw the many offences committed by priests and by religious people, and the great sorrow that blessed Jesus felt because of them. Almost surprised, I said, "My sweet life, it is true that religious people offend you, but it seems to me that the secular offend you more. Yet you show greater sorrow for the first than for the second. It seems you are all eyes to look at all that the first are doing, and you seem not to look at what the second do." And he, "Ah, my daughter, you cannot comprehend the difference that exists between the offences of the religious and those of the secular. This is why you are surprised. The religious have declared that they belong to me, love me, and serve me, and I have entrusted the treasures of my grace to them, and the treasures of the sacraments to others who are the priests. Now, while pretending on the outside that they belong to me, in their interior, if they need, they are far away from me. They show that they love me and serve me, but they offend me, and they use holy things to serve their own passions. This is why I am all eyes, so as not to let them spoil my gifts and my graces. But in spite of my cares, they reach the point of wreaking havoc with those very things with which on the outside they seem to be glorifying me. This offence is so grave that if you could comprehend it, you would die of heartbreak. On the other hand, the secular declare that they do not belong to me, that they do not know me, and that they do not want to serve me. And because of this, first of all, they are free of the spirit of hypocrisy, which is the thing that displeases me the most. Therefore, since they have declared themselves, I have not been able to entrust my gifts to them. Even though grace excites them, it fights them. It has not given itself because they do not want it. It happens as to a king who, having waged battle to free the peoples from the slavery in which they are kept by other kings, managed by force of blood to free some of these people. Then he placed them under his dominion, providing everything for them, and if necessary, letting them live in his own residence. Now, who would displease me more if they offended him? The peoples which remain far away from him and which he yet wanted to free, or the ones that live with him? End of the reading. The 16th of November 1909, Volume 9. Sin is the only disorder in the soul. After spending bitter days of privation, having received communion, I was lamenting to blessed Jesus, saying to him, "It really seems you want to leave me completely. But at least tell me, do you want me to go out of this state? Who knows what disorder there is in me that you have moved away? Tell me, for I promise you from the heart I will be more good." And Jesus, "My daughter, do not become alarmed. When I make you lose consciousness, remain peaceful. When I don't, remain more peaceful without wasting time. Whatever happens to you, take everything from my hands. Can I not suspend your state for a few days? As for the disorder, I would have told you. Do you know what puts disorder in the soul? Only sin, even the slightest. Oh, how it deforms her, discolours her, debilitates her. But the interior states, the privations, do no harm to her. Therefore be careful not to offend me even slightly, and have no fear of disorder in your soul." And I, "But Lord, there must be something bad in me. Before you did nothing but come and go, and in these visits, sharing of crosses, of nails, of thorns. But when nature has become so used to them to the point of considering them natural, so much so that suffering is easier for her than not suffering, you withdraw. How is it possible that there is nothing grave in me?" And Jesus benignly told me, "Listen, my daughter, I had to dispose your soul to make you reach this point of delighting in suffering, so as to do my work. Therefore I had to test you, surprise you, load you with sufferings, so that your nature might rise again to new life. This work I have completed, since the participation in my pains has remained in you permanently, now more, now less. Now, having completed this work, I am enjoying it. Don't you want me to rest? Listen, do not want to think about it. Let your Jesus do it, who loves you very much. I know when my crafting is necessary in you, and when I must rest from my work." End of the reading. The 16th of November 1918, Volume 12. Humiliations are the fissures through which light enters. Continuing in my usual state, my Jesus just barely came. It seemed that he was feeling an intense pain in his heart, and asking me for help, he told me, "My daughter, what chains of crimes in these days! What a satanic triumph! The prosperity of the evil is the worst sign. It is shovings through which faith leads their nations, which remain trapped within an obscure prison. Instead, humiliations to the evil are like many fissures through which light enters, a light which makes them come back to their senses. bringing faith to them and to their nations. Therefore, humiliation will benefit them more than any victory or conquest. What critical and painful points they will go through. Hell and the evil are consumed with rage to begin their plots and wicked deeds. Poor children of mine, poor church of mine. End of the reading. The 16th of November 1926, Volume 20. How each act of the human will is a veil that prevents the soul from knowing the divine will. Jealousy of the divine will. How it takes on all the offices for the soul. Threats of wars and of chastisements. My usual state of abandonment in the supreme fiat continues. But at the same time I call He who forms all my happiness, my life, my all. And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, the more you abandon yourself in the supreme volition, the more you advance along its ways, the more knowledges you acquire, and the more you take possession of the goods that are in the divine will, because in it there is always something to know and to take. Being the primary inheritance given by God to the creature and possessing the eternal goods, my will has the task to always give to one who lives in this inheritance. And only when it finds the creature within the boundaries of its volition, then is it content and begins the activity of its office, and putting itself in feast, it gives new things to its heiress. So the soul who lives in it is the feast of my will. On the contrary, those who live outside of it are its sorrow, because they put it in the inability to give, to exercise its office, and to fulfill its task. More so, since each act of the human will is a veil that the soul puts before her sight that prevents her from seeing with clarity my will and the goods contained in it. And since most of the creatures live continuously of their own will, they form so many veils as to become almost blind to knowing and seeing my will, their choicest inheritance, that was to render them happy in time and eternity. Oh, if creatures could comprehend the great evil of the human will and the great good of mine, they would abhor their will so much as to lay down their lives in order to do mine. The human will renders a man a slave. It causes him to be in need of everything. He feels strength and light missing in him continuously. His existence is always in danger, and whatever he obtains is by dint of prayers and with difficulty. So the man who lives of his will is the true beggar. On the other hand, one who lives in mine has no need of anything. He has everything at his disposal. My will gives him the dominion of himself, and therefore he is the owner of strength, of light, and not of human strength and light, but of divine. His existence is always secure, and since he is the owner, he can take whatever he wants, nor does he need to ask in order to receive. This is so true that before Adam withdrew from my will, prayer did not exist. It is need that makes prayer arise, but he did not need anything. He had nothing to ask for or to impetrate. So he loved, he praised, he adored his Creator. Prayer had no place in the terrestrial Eden. This means prayer of petition. Prayer came, it arose after sin, as an extreme need of the heart of man. When one prays, it means that he needs something, and because he hopes, he prays in order to obtain. On the other hand, one who lives in my will lives in the opulence of the goods of her Creator as the owner, and if she feels any need or desire, seeing herself in the midst of so many goods, it is that of wanting to give her happiness and the goods of her great fortune to others. As the true image of her Creator, who has given so much to her with no restriction at all, she would want to imitate him by giving to others what she possesses. Oh, how beautiful is the heaven of the soul who lives in my will. It is a heaven with no storms, with no clouds, with no rain, because the water that quenches her thirst, that fecundates her, that gives her growth and the likeness of he who created her, is my will. Its jealousy, so that the soul would not take anything if it is not of its own, is so great that it does all the offices. If she wants to drink, it makes itself water, that while refreshing her extinguishes all other thirsts, so that her only thirst may be its will. If she is hungry, it makes itself food, that while satiating her, takes away from her the appetite for all other foods. If she wants to be beautiful, it makes itself brush, giving her brush strokes of such beauty that my will itself remains enraptured at a beauty so rare, impressed by it itself in the creature. It must be able to say to the whole of heaven, "Look at her, how beautiful she is. It is the flower, it is the fragrance, it is the colour of my volition that made her so beautiful." In sum, it gives her its strength, its light, its sanctity, and everything, so as to be able to say, "She is a work fully of my will. Therefore I want her to lack nothing, to be like me and to possess me." Look into yourself to see the work of my will, how your acts, invested by its light, have changed the earth of your soul. Everything is light that arises within you and turns to wound he who invested it. Therefore the greatest affront I receive from creatures is to not do my will. After this he transported me outside of myself, making me see the great evil of the human generations. And resuming his speaking, he added, "My daughter, look at how much evil the human will has produced. They are so blinded themselves that they are preparing fierce wars and revolutions. This time it will not be just Europe, but other races will unite together. The circle will be more extensive. Other parts of the world will participate. How much evil does the human will? It blinds man, it impoverishes him, and it makes of him the murderer of himself. But I will use this for my highest purpose, and the reunion of so many races will serve to facilitate the communications of the truths, so that they may dispose themselves for the kingdom of the supreme fiat. So the chastisements that have occurred are nothing other than the preludes of those that will come. How many more cities will be destroyed? How many peoples buried under the ruins? How many places buried and plunged into the abyss? The elements will take the part of their creator. My justice can bear no more. My will wants to triumph and would want to triumph by means of love in order to establish its kingdom. But man does not want to come to meet this love. Therefore it is necessary to use justice. And while he was saying this, he showed an immense brazier of fire coming out of the earth, and those who were near it were invested by that fire and disappeared. I was left frightened, and I pray and hope that my beloved good will placate himself. End of the reading. The 16th of November 1931, Volume 30. Each human act is a game, a pledge, in order to win the celestial graces. The human act is soil in which the divine will sows its seed. How love constitutes a right. I feel myself pray to the divine will, yet not forced, but voluntary. And I feel the intense need to make a pray for myself too, that would render me happy in time and eternity, and therefore in all my acts I try to make a prey of the light of the divine will, of its sanctity, of its very life. So I call it, I press it, to capture it in my acts, to enclose it in them and be able to say, each act of mine is a prey and a conquest that I make, prey and conquest of divine will. More so, since it having prayed mine, without a will I cannot live, therefore it is fair and a right for me to make a prey of its own. And in this praying of each other, it seems to me that we maintain the correspondence, the game, and the love of both sides ignites more. Now, while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus seemed to be pleased in hearing my nonsense, and I said to myself, after all, I am little and just newly born. If I speak nonsense, it is not a big deal, but rather one is to make allowances for me, because the little ones are prone to speak nonsense, and many times dear Jesus delights in the nonsense spoken out of pure love, and he takes the occasion to give a little lesson, as in fact he did. Visiting my little soul, he told me, my little daughter of my will, indeed everything that passes between the Creator and the creature, the acts that she does and what she receives from God, serve to maintain the correspondence, for them to know each other more, so as to love each other more, and to keep up the game between each other, to obtain the intent of what God wants from the creature and of what she wants from God. So, each act is a game that is prepared to obtain the most beautiful victories and make a prey of each other. The act serves as material in order to play and as pledge in order to have something to give to the winner. God, by giving, puts in his pledge. The creature, by doing her act, puts in her own, and they set up the game. And our goodness is so great that we make ourselves weak so as to let the creature win. Other times we make ourselves strong and we win. And this we do in order to keep her on her toes, so that by doing more acts she may put in more pledges, and so she may be able to win to make up for the defeat. After all, how could the union be maintained if we were to give nothing and the creature were to give us nothing? See then, each act is a committing of ourselves to give greater graces, and a correspondence that you open between heaven and earth, and a game in which you call your Creator to be with you. More so, since each act done by the divine will in the act of the creature is a divine seed that germinates in her. The act prepares the soil in which my will sows its seed to make it germinate into a divine plant. In fact, according to the seed that is sown into the womb of the earth, that is the plant that is born. If the seed is of flowers, the flower is born. If the seed is of fruit, the fruit is born. Now my divine will sows a distinct seed in each act of creature. In some, it sows the seed of sanctity. In some, the seed of love. In others, the seed of goodness, and so forth. The more acts she does in it, the more soil she prepares, in which my will prepares its distinct seed, to fill the earth with these human acts. So, one who lets herself be dominated by my divine will is beautiful, is striking. Each of her acts, containing the variety of the divine seeds, is a note of her Creator. One act says sanctity, another mercy, others justice, wisdom, beauty, love. In some, a divine harmony appears, with such order that it shows the finger of God operating in her. Do you see then the necessity of the act of the creature in order for us to be able to find the soil in which to enclose our divine seed? Otherwise, where to sow it? As for us, we have no soil, therefore she must form it for us with her acts, so that with our seeds we may germinate our divine being in the creature. Therefore, one who does and lives in our divine will can be called she who reproduces her Creator and hosts within herself He who created her. Then I continued in my acts in the divine volition, and my littleness wanted to embrace everything in my embrace of love, to be able to make my little love run in all things and everywhere. But while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, to love means to possess, and wanting to make the beloved person or object one's own. To love means bond, whether of friendship or of kinship or of relationship, according to the greater or lesser intensity of the love. So if between the creature and God there is no void of divine love, if all his acts run toward God to love him, if they have their origin in love and in love they end, if he looks at all things that belong to the Supreme Being as his own, this is love of Son towards his Father, because in this way one does not go out either of the divine properties or of the house of the Celestial Father. In fact, true love constitutes a right in the creature, right of relationship, right of participation in the goods, right to be loved. Each of his acts of love is a vibrating note that palpitates in the divine heart, and with its sound it says, "I love you, love me." And the sound does not cease if he does not hear the note of his Creator, that echoing the sound of the soul answers to him, "I love you, O Son." Oh, how we await the "I love you" of the creature, to let him take his place in our love, to have the sweet pleasure of being able to say to him, "I love you, O Son," and to be able to give him a greater right to love us and to belong to our family. A broken love, and one that does not make our things its own, nor does it defend them, cannot be called love of Son. At most it can be love of friendship, love of circumstance, love of interest, love of necessity, that does not constitute a right, because only sons have the right to possess the goods of the Father, and the Father has the sacrosanct duty, even by divine and human laws, to make his children possess his goods. Therefore, love always, so that you may find in all your acts the love, the encounter, the kiss of your Creator. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.